I'm running out of light. Gotta hurry. Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Andrew, and thank you so much for being here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And today I have a very special video. Well, it's special to me. I hope it's enjoyable to you. And a few months back, you may have seen, I made a video about my violin and my viola, except neither of those instruments featured in that video were actually mine. But I mentioned in that video that I wanted to, at some point, make a video about the other violin and the other viola that I have in my possession that are both actually mine. And in the last few months, I've had the opportunity to reacquire my own violin and my own viola, which have been featured in a couple of the more recent videos on my channel, and now I have the opportunity to talk about them, which I am super excited about. This violin, this is my violin, and I was hoping to feature both instruments in the same video, but I realized that there's kind of so much to talk about that they kind of deserve their own separate videos. So this video is just going to be about my violin and its very wonderful story. Well, I think it's a wonderful story. It's just a really lovely instrument, and I have been so privileged to have it, and yeah, let's get right into it. So this violin of mine, it's a gorgeous instrument, and it is a Juzek violin, which may or may not be somewhat familiar to any string players watching this. Juzek is a company that is still operating today, and they make stringed instruments at a sort of an entry-level, student level. And but back a while ago, they did make instruments at more tiers. They had professional level instruments as well as the lower student level ones. This particular violin is kind of more of a student level violin, but despite that, I would say it is quite a remarkable instrument. It has a beautiful sound, and I absolutely love this violin. So the Juzek, or Juzek, I don't know, maybe that's how you're supposed to pronounce it, the workshop, the official workshop, was located in Prague, Czechoslovakia, or what was Czechoslovakia at the time. This violin was made in 1923, so it is almost 100 years old. And from the information that I found on the internet, most violins, such as probably this one, were made by other independent makers who had their own workshops sort of like around Czechoslovakia, and I think some of them perhaps even across the border in Germany nearby. And so this violin was likely made in like northwestern Czechoslovakia, modern Czech Republic, or maybe even in Germany, by an independent, unnamed violin maker who was contracted to make it for the John Juzek brand. And then it was sent to Prague, and then the label was put in, and then it was shipped overseas. And these instruments, these Juzek instruments, were in high demand in the United States, because there was quite a lot of demand over here on the East Coast for just like good student level instruments, and so they were making a bunch of them over there and shipping them overseas. As far as I can tell, this violin has spent most of its life here on the East Coast. It must have made its way down to Washington, D.C. at some point, because I acquired this violin from my former teacher. I used to study with Vern Summers, he was a first violinist with the National Symphony Orchestra for more than 40 years, I think, in Washington, D.C. And yeah, I studied with him for a few years, and he, as well as, of course, being a professional player and teacher, also collected instruments, violins, violas, and cellos, and bows, of course. And this was one of the instruments he had in his collection. And actually, when I was about 12 years old, I sort of went through a stage of very severe burnout with my violin playing, and I basically almost quit. For 4 months or so, I stopped taking lessons and I really didn't play hardly at all. And right before that, I had just gone through a lot of growth, physical growth, and I had been playing a 3/4 sized violin up until that point, and it was time for me to seek out a full-sized instrument. And so as I was looking at local shops, I was also trying out violins from Vern's own collection. He'd have a few set out for me when I would go to a lesson, and I would try them, and he had such an excellent ear. He knew exactly which instruments would suit me well, and sometimes, even when I was trying them, he would know when I was comfortable on an instrument even better than I myself did, which is pretty amazing. And so I was trying violins, I think somewhere around the $7,000 to $10,000 price point, which is pretty insane. I mean, that's not very expensive in the grand scheme of violins, how expensive they can be, but especially given I was only 12, and just the fact that that's a lot of money, it's crazy. But anyway, I remember when it was decided that I was actually gonna take sort of a hiatus for a few months, we decided that we were going to end the search. It's like my parents and I were discussing, like, doesn't it seem like a really bad idea to invest a lot of money in a nice instrument right now when you're not even motivated to practice? And I was like, yeah, you're right. So my teacher, Vern, was like, don't not have an instrument to play during this time. At least have a violin that plays well and that fits you and that you like at home, so that, you know, you can still maybe every few days still pull it out of the case and still play a few notes. Don't not have a violin in your house during this phase. So I remember at sort of the height of the search for a new instrument, I'd been trying this really nice Ernst Heinrich Roth violin. I think that was the maker. That was from Vern's collection. It was just an incredibly beautiful violin, and I loved it. I loved the sound, and I loved how it played. And even as burnt out as I was, that violin still kind of made me excited to practice, perhaps superficially, but yeah, I really, really loved that violin. And there was one lesson where he pulled out a few cheaper violins from his collection, and I walked into a lesson one day. He had a few of these cheaper instruments laying on the piano, and he was like, here are some you can try, maybe if you like one of these, you can rent it from me for a while. Maybe purchase it later, or maybe things will change and maybe you'll, be more motivated to practice, and maybe you will want to invest in a nicer instrument. And so this was one of 3 violins that was on the piano in his studio that day. And I think I remember trying this violin back to back with the Roth, with the really nice Roth violin, and I actually struggled to tell the difference. Even though this violin probably, if I were to buy it outright, it would have cost me like $1,800 or something like that, less than $2,000. So like under a fifth of the price of the Roth violin. But I had trouble telling the difference in terms of sound. This violin was really doing a superb job at keeping up in terms of the quality of sound. I could tell a difference in terms of the playability. This one wasn't quite as comfortable to play, but it still played really well, and it just sounded amazing. And so this one stood out from those other 2 cheap violins that he had for me to try that day. And I decided, I think I like this one. I think I'll take this one for now. And he was like, all right, take this violin and rent it from me and practice when you can. And eventually I returned to taking lessons, and then later quit long term because I started studying horn, and then really kind of didn't play violin hardly at all for the next several years. And it's just recently, within the last year and a half or so, that I've really gotten back into playing. But in any case, there was one day when I was still studying with Vern that I walked into a lesson one day, and it happened to be my birthday, and Vern decided just on the spot that he wanted to give me this violin. He said, all rental payments that you owe me are now canceled. This violin is yours now. And I don't think I really understood how incredible that was at the time. It's really only kind of dawned on me how incredibly generous Vern was as a person, just all around. He was so generous with himself, with his energy, with his time, and then of course with his resources as well. And he gave me this instrument, and it's become so unbelievably special to me. And I don't think I'll ever part ways with this violin, even if at some point I end up investing in maybe a nicer instrument. I don't think I'll ever get rid of this one. It's just too special, and it really is a wonderful violin in its own right, and it has such a beautiful sound. And so unfortunately it had sat in its case for a while, and it wasn't entirely playable as of recently. There's a crack that's developed down here at the bottom of the body, and the fingerboard was getting kind of warped, and the old tuning pegs had really kind of worn out. So just in January a few months ago, I decided to take this into the shop and get it all nice and spruced up, and so got the fingerboard, replaned, and got new beautiful tuning pegs in here, and I've been playing it almost exclusively since then, and it's kind of returned to its former glory. And so I'm super duper excited about this violin. yeah, that's basically the story of this instrument, which is just so special to me. And I'll have a few clips of excerpts of various pieces I'm working on at the moment for you to hear this violin in action as well. And so yeah, thanks so much for joining me today and for hearing my little story time about my violin. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, be sure and hit the like button, and maybe leave a comment down below. I do lots of various different kinds of content here on this channel. So it's never quite the same each time, but it's almost always music related. So if you enjoy my, silly, crazy music content I do here, feel free to just subscribe, and I'd love to have you around. And also be sure and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And with that, thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and hope you're having a great day. I'll see you next time.